AP Language and Junior Brit Lit.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christie, what is the teacher's role in creating a blended classroom?
I think the creation involves a lot of front loading. You have to anticipate and define which parts of your curriculum will best be delivered online and which can be served better face-to-face. And that seems simple, but it takes a lot of time. And I think the other part is to be ready to encounter students who aren't used to it and to encourage them to be willing to experiment and go through the process with you.
Well, so you're an experienced teacher.
Mm-hmm.
What skill sets would a teacher need to start and manage that kind of a blended classroom?
Patience is a big skill set. I think just a real confidence in the knowledgeability and the content and a knowledge of student development, adolescents, and how they might react. A willingness to experiment, try things, shift when they don't work. Flexibility is very important in starting a blended classroom, I think.
So what recommendations would you have for teachers who are interested in participating in a blended classroom?
The first recommendation is do it. This is the time to do it. And people shouldn't be afraid because it's an unknown to go ahead and give it a try. And as I said, to just be prepared for a lot of change, a lot of flexibility that will be needed, and willing to fail and try again. Some of the same things we try to encourage our students to do, I think.
Yes, we do. So can you think of some ways where you have helped students become more flexible or help them get over their own personal hump from traditional learning to a blended classroom format?
Some specific ways.
Yeah.
In general, many of my students at the outset, there were technical problems, and that is just, I think, goes with the territory. And some of them were very anxious. These are AP students, and so they were worried about how it might affect grades and affect their futures and the world. And so I know that one of the things I'm doing now is revising my entire grading system based on some of the problems that we encountered technologically and with this blended model, so that the focus is shifted from what grade am I going to get and how behind might I get to how am I learning and how can I use my resources best to learn. I think that the comfort level of the students has just increased exponentially from the beginning when they were wary and they were afraid, and even though they're savvy with their iPhones and their iPads, and just the idea of learning in that way and using them as a tool was so foreign, and now it's just comfortable.
Those are good conversations to have with kids.
Mm-hmm.
Good learning for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you mentioned, the grading, now that you're a few months down the road, the grading you would do differently. Anything else you might do differently now that you've kind of jumped in, waded through the waters a little bit and said, oh, I would have done this differently earlier had I known?
I can't think of anything that specific. I think that I'm seeing as I go little tweaks all along the way, and the things, as I said at the outset, that work better face-to-face. In my discipline, the one-on-one contact with students and the ability to focus on specific needs of different students is so much greater with the online. And so I'm seeing ways that they can do drilling in grammar and those kinds of things online, and those kids who are behind can catch up and can feel a little more self-directed and in charge, I think, of their learning.
Okay. Any other bumps along the way that could be avoided if you're talking to somebody who wants to jump in, say, next year or even now? Anything to put in their mind?
It's hard to define anything because it's a work in progress, and it's something that is specific to each teacher, I think, and finding how the different tools meet your needs is unique, I think, to each person. So,
what I really appreciate you saying is one of the struggles we've had at the school is what to name this. We've
Mm-hmm.
run from flex to hybrid to blended to
Mm-hmm.
the thing that you do, But I think what you just said really encapsulates a lot of that. Obviously, there's been a huge amount of flexibility on your part,
Mm-hmm.
over this last 5 or 6 months, huge amount of flexibility over the students' part.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we're using a hybrid of face-to-face and what we might say old school technology along with new technology,
Mm-hmm.
which has enabled you to meet with students in a, even though you have a large number of students, I think your classes average in the high 30s, you've been able to individualize that instruction, which is something that we've all wanted to get to at some point, but haven't always figured out how to do that. Thinking back now about 5-6 months ago, what was September like for you and the kids? I mean, you've traveled quite a path so far. So, what were those first days like?
Interesting. I think I would characterize them as interesting. And from one day to the next, we encountered all kinds of different things. And you could, depending on your point of view, it could be seen as chaotic, or it could be seen as an ideal kind of experience for learning how to be resourceful and figure out what works and what doesn't work, and be willing to keep persevering instead of just saying immediately, this doesn't work, I don't get it, we're done. So it was a process in September of giving students permission to feel okay about the confusion. It's okay to be confused sometimes, and that was September, and now we're not confused, and so it's a learning process.
So when we think about some of the buzzwords that are out in education today, a growth mindset, having some grit, perseverance, all of this ended up being a byproduct.
It's embedded.
Embedded in the whole process. So we learned some character along with some content. That's terrific. Can you comment on student engagement, both in the online portion and the classroom aspects? Engaged, not engaged, do you have to say, hey, get in there and do your stuff, or how's that part
That's
working?
one of the pieces that I'm working on, because I think at first that the students were not sure how to use that time, because I have a lab rotation model, and so when I'm meeting with small groups, the rest of the class is working on their assignments online in a lab. And so some of the kids felt like, do I need to use this time for that? And maybe some were wasting their time. But again, it was a learning experience, because the consequences are your work isn't done, and then you're spending more time at home. So I think that the use of the time and the students' ability to understand responsibility is also embedded there.
Mm-hmm. In talking with some students, that responsibility word came out with them, and several of them felt that they had actually become more responsible, although I know they hated to use that word.
Yeah.
But, they felt that they had it had helped them manage their time better, which was an interesting byproduct. We didn't go into this thinking that was going to happen. But what I've heard from students is they've become able to manage their materials on their iPad much better than dumping their backpack on the bed, and that they've been able to manage their time. And that was a little bit of a surprise to them as well.
And it's ongoing, and I think it's exactly what they need for college. This is shifting a lot more of the responsibility to them and giving them the tools they need, but the expectation is they'll use them. And at first, I think they're used to a little bit of hand-holding and direction, and this requires them to take the base and then use it to their advantage. And I like it.
I do too. How would you measure success then? I mean, we've talked about some intangibles, character development, some of those 21st century skills around collaboration and communication and some creativity and whatnot. But how would you measure success? This is an AP language class after all. Where are they?
So measure success for students?
Just in content. How do you measure student growth and content in the academic arena of this experiment?
I measure it much the way I've always measured it. It's a writing-based class, and so how well can they write? How well can they access resources that they need for whatever type of writing it is? And speaking and communicating, they've done discussion boards online, so they've learned how to communicate in that forum as well as face-to-face. I think that so far the assessment piece, except for formative assessment, which I've used the online a lot for, the success is much the same as it's always been. I don't think that the technological component has changed that much.
Okay, great. Finally, my question, what can your administrator do to support you?
Exactly what my administrator has done. I think entrust me with the tools and stand back, ask what I need, be ready when I come in saying, to say, you can do this, and it's just altogether been a very comfortable experience in terms of administrative support, so.
Well, great.
Can't complain there.
Final words to anybody that wants to give it a try, or to any an administrator out there wondering about whether it's going to work in their school?
I think that it isn't a question of if. This is where we're headed, and whatever name you want to give it, blended or flex or hybrid or whatever, these are the tools that we're using, and not using the online tools that we have is just doing a disservice to the students. So my final words are just do it, and as Dory would, or Nemo would say, just keep swimming. That's what we do.
Great. Thank you, Christie McCormick, Superior AP Language Blended Classroom Teacher.